Hey everybody, and Tony here with a review of Rossini's Il Viaggio a Reims, which I saw last night at the Deutsche Oper Berlin. The conductor was Giacomo Sacripanti, the production was done by Jan Bosse, the sets were done by Stéphane Lemay, the costumes were done by Katrin Platt, the lights were handled by Kevin Zock, the videographer was Maika Dresenkamp, the assistant director was Claudia Gotta, and the dramaturgy was handled by Lars Gebhardt. I was really excited to catch this particular production of Il Viaggio a Reims at the Deutsche Oper Berlin because this production boasted a cast of really fine bel canto singers. I will gladly talk about them much later in this review, but first, my thoughts on the production. Overall, I had mixed feelings with this particular production of Il Viaggio a Reims. What I noticed about it is that the action is transported from the early 19th century Europe in a swanky hotel to something more akin to a swanky flop house slash hospital. And all the guests are in different cots. And of course, let's not forget about Madama Cortese, Maddalena, Antonio, and Zeffirino, and all the other servants being dressed up as hospital staff, what with being nurses and surgeons and all that stuff. The overall production was really minimalistic in its approach, and I would have loved to have a little bit more pomp and color to be added into the mix. However, I will say that a lot of the costumes were really awesome to look at, especially Corina's, what with her elegant bronze gown, and especially that moment where Don Profondo sings his aria Medaglie Incomparabili, in which all the guests are wearing boxers of the different flags of the European continent, with Marchesa Melibea coming in with a Polish flag, Cavaliere Belfiore and La Contessa de Folleville coming in with the French flags, Barone di Trombono coming in with the German flag, Don Profondo with, of course, the Italian flag, Don Alvaro with the Spanish flag, Lord Sidney with the flag of the United Kingdom, Il Conte di Liebenskopf with the Russian flag, and once they take off their shorts, they even wear the flag of the European Union, which I thought was rather hilarious in hindsight. I will also have to say that the second half of the opera was slightly better than the first half. While the first half was a little bit more stolid in terms of its scenery, the second half was slightly more vibrant, what with the guests coming in a lot of different costumes, and even when they were singing their anthems, they had their signs being attached to their torso area. I thought that was rather interesting. And let's also not forget about the duet between Belfiore and Corina, the major highlight of this opera. We not only see Belfiore and Corina together, but a host of Corina duplicates coming in with the same costume, which I thought was kind of weird because it kind of robbed the intimacy that these two have, even though Corina is not really turned on by Cavaliere Belfiore. So overall, as I stated before, I had very mixed feelings with this particular production. That's not to say it was bad. No, far from it. I thought it was interesting in its own way, but it just didn't really grab me. There were certain interesting elements, though nonetheless I still managed to have fun with Don Profondo's aria, which was always a highlight for me. So, not to mince words here, the entire affair was meh overall, but there were certainly some elements which were quite enjoyable. And now we get to the singers, starting off with the fabulous and ever wonderful Hulkar Sabirova as Madama Cortese. I've been following this particular dramatic coloratura soprano's career for quite some time, and she continues to bloom with excellence. She is definitely a wonderful, young, dramatic coloratura soprano that I have been wanting to hear for the longest time. My very first experience with Miss Sabirova was when she interpreted the role of the Queen of the Night, which I thought she did a magnificent job. Here, she was at her A game. She was at her strongest, when she sang her aria, and I thought she was able to sing the cabaletta so fearlessly and so accurately that she even let out a final high D before wrapping the entire shebang. I also loved how she was able to hit that high E flat in the second half of the opera, and I thought that she was able to pull off this role with not only a great amount of strength, but also elegance, beauty, great technicality, and peerless musicianship. So Hulkar Sabirova was indubitably one of the major stars of last night. Equally as excellent was Elena Talagova as Corinna. Her voice seems to have grown in fullness and richness based on what I heard last night. It's a lot more lyrical throughout all the registers, but it still manages to be graceful and absolutely pleasing to the ear. And she was, as always, a darling on stage. She had this sort of presence which made me want to love her. She had a certain nobility to her, which she was able to exude so well. And for that, I salute her for all of her efforts. She continues to be a flawless lyric soprano with her great musicianship, great tone, and overall cleanliness, which she was able to demonstrate throughout everything she did as Corinna. Her arias were lilting as they managed to put me in such a state of charm that I was totally enamored with her performance. Annika Schlicht manages to be a very strong Marchesa Melibea. I've also followed this particular mezzocontralto's career for quite some time. From her beginnings with the character parts to going into more slightly leading lady roles, I cannot begin to express just how awestruck I was when she was opening her mouth to sing all of Marchesa Melibea's lines. There is a fullness and richness in her voice which she has gained throughout all the years, and I cannot wait to see her in a lot more dramatic parts, like Dalila from Sanson et Dalila, the title role of Carmen, Eboli from Don Carlo, and maybe even Amneris from Aida. Who knows? The future for this young mezzocontralto holds a lot of possibilities. Her tone was secure, her intonation was rich, and everything that she did as Marchesa Melibea screamed charisma and brilliance all the way through. Siobhan Stagg was a gorgeous Contessa de Folleville. She's not one of those high-singing stratospheric Tweety Bird coloratura sopranos. She's far from that. She is essentially a lyric soprano, well, more accurately, a lyric coloratura soprano that's not so much of a high singer, but is certainly a natural singing actress all the way through. And sure, I would have loved to hear her sing the final high E flat before wrapping up the cabaletta of Partir o Ciel, but I digress. I still have to give Miss Stagg a lot of credit for everything she accomplished as La Contessa de Folleville. She was able to bring out so much elegance, charm, hilarity, and charisma to this part that she had me eating out of the palms of her hands. She was able to be spunky and sparky all the way through that I was totally hooked from beginning to end. David Portillo was youthful, handsome, and dashing as Il Conte di Libenskoff. With his fine and well-intonated lyric tenor voice, he certainly made such a great impression in this role, and he certainly has a brilliant future ahead of him. I cannot wait to hear him in roles like Edgardo from Lucia de Lammermoor, Percy from Anna Bolena, Lester from Maria Stuarda, Roberto Devereux from Roberto Devereux, Arturo from I Puritani, and maybe even Orombello from Beatrice di Tenda. He had such a magnificent bel canto technique that I was practically on the edge of my seat. Yes, it may not have that more refined quality evidenced in other tenors like Francisco Araiza or Nicolai Gueda or Alfredo Kraus, just to name a few, but he was solid all the way through, and he sang with a sufficient amount of passion and virility found in that youthful lyric tenor voice. Gideon Poppe was certainly a surprise as Il Cavaliere Belfiore, and even though his tone kind of strayed away from the Italianità that I really love in a lot of bel canto tenors like Luigi Alva, Juan Diego Flores, and what we've been having today with Javier Camarena, I still have to give Gideon Poppe a good amount of credit for pulling this role off. As always, he was a charming and dashing singing actor. In fact, he exceeded in his own special way, and for that, I have to salute him for all of his efforts. His tone managed to be clean and clear all the way through, and even though I would have loved to have a little bit more floridness in his voice, he's still a very solid musician all the way through. Philippe Yekal was a virile barone di trombonok, and this was definitely a wonderful singer who has a brilliant future ahead of him. His voice was round and rich, even though he's still quite young, being about 26 years old. But he certainly has something great ahead of him, and I cannot wait to see where his career will go. He definitely has a fine and well-tuned cavalier baritone voice that I definitely love to hear more of, and he certainly knew how to give this character a lot of life and a lot of charisma. Dong-Hwan Lee was a virile and absolutely masculine Don Alvaro. With his rich, burnished tone, he really knew how to embody this role with masculinity, pride, and so much charisma that he had me at the edge of my seat. He had something dashing about him which made him all the more addicting to watch, and for that he deserves all the praise I give to him. Mikhail Kiria was an absolutely strong and masculine Lord Sidney. And even though I would have loved to have this role being sung by either a basso cantante or a basso profondo, I still have to give him lots of credit for pulling this off so well. And even though he is essentially a Heldenbariton or a dramatic baritone, he basically specializes in a lot of the comic bass baritone roles, like Dottor Bartolo from Il Barbiere di Siviglia and even that of Gianni Schicchi. And he really knows how to put that comic timing to great use. With his impeccable acting skills and of course that rich, strong tone, which I love in any dramatic baritone, which also in turn is reminiscent of the great Gian Giacomo Guelfi, Cornell McNeil, and a lot of the great baritones of the past, I really have to give it to him. This is a gentleman who I'm sure is going to sing a lot more dramatic baritone roles in the near future. In fact, I would love to hear him sing roles like Nabucco, or Telramund, or Albrecht, or Klingsor. The possibilities for this gentleman are really endless. Davide Luciano was a charismatic, charming, and amazing Don Profondo, with his great comic timing. And much like Lord Sidney, I would have loved to have this role being sung by either a basso cantante or a basso profondo. More specifically a basso cantante. However, I still have to give Signore Luciano lots of credit for how he was able to sing and act this role. He was able to be very charming all the way through, and his rendition of Medaglie Incomparabili was a really great blast from beginning to end. He certainly knew how to move around the stage, and he had a great amount of energy to back him up really well. And for that, his efforts cannot be denied. Sam Robert Smith made such an amazing use of the character part of Don Prudencio. His stage presence was tall, handsome, and masculine, as it's always been, and I cannot wait to see him in a lot more leading male roles, because he has the rich, focused, and absolutely well-tuned and clean voice that is a huge must for all of these roles. And he definitely knew how to give Don Prudencio a great amount of charm, likability, and brilliance. We also had such magnificent singing from Byung-Gil Kim's strong Antonio, Juan de Dios Mateo's really charming and really lyrical Zefirino, Michot Marero's hyperactive yet absolutely rollicking Modestina, Davia Boulet's gorgeous Delia, and Alexandra Yunis's strong, capable, and wonderful Madalena. So overall, the singing was absolutely brilliant, most especially from the leading ladies, Hulka Sabirova, Elena Zalagova, Annika Schlicht, and Shaban Stagg. These four magnificent ladies really knew how to steal the show. I also have to give a lot of credit to the leading men, David Portillo, Gideon Poppe, Philip Yekal, Dong-Hwan Lee, Mikhail Kiria, Davide Luciano, and Sam Roberts-Smith for contributing so handsomely. Oh, and let's not forget about Byung-Gil Kim, Juan de Dios Mateos, Davia Boulet, Michot Marrero, and Alexandra Yunis. This was definitely a unified effort all the way through, and their strengths were in absolute evidence. And the conducting done by Giacomo Sagripanti was solid all the way through. He led the orchestra well, he made sure that the singers stayed on cue, and everything was a wonderful package from beginning to end. So overall, even though I'm not a major fan of this production of Il Viaggio a Reims, I still have to salute all the singers for doing such magnificent jobs, and of course, the superb conducting done by Giacomo Sagripanti. And for those of you who watched this particular production of Rossini's Il Viaggio a Reims at the Deutsche Oper Berlin, what did you think of it? Was there a singer who stood out to you so much? Did you feel like this was a unified effort from beginning to end? Or was there someone that stood out like a sore thumb? Or did you even feel like the production was not to your liking? Comment below and let me know. Well, that's all for now. Be sure to tune in much later this evening for my review of Gounod's Faust, starring Nicole Carr as Marguerite and Alex Esposito as Mephistopheles. So until then, have a great summer, everybody.